Happy Monday, and welcome back to the Lorden Arts channel. I'm John Lorden. Thank you so much for spending some time with us here today. Case Cracked is the show where we look into a mystery and what are the critical pieces that help solve that mystery. Today's episode is called A Truly Wicked Game. How many friends have we all made through the years that were once a daily part of our lives and then they moved, found a new partner, or just started fresh somewhere else? It happens to people every day. Do you ever worry about someone that's left your life? After today's story, you might. Christophe Bourgaille moved to the UK in 2007 from Ronkin, France, while working as a flight attendant for Ryanair Airlines. He lived in Liverpool with two other men, Manuel Wagner and Sebastian Bendu. In July of 2008, the group moved and rented a house in nearby Ellesmere Port in Cheshire. They soon met their next-door neighbor, 40-year-old Dominic Coker. Coker was unemployed, married, and a father of three, but he soon arranged a partnership with his new friends. While the roommates worked, their paycheck funds went into an account Coker had set up that he used to pay all of their bills. His duties didn't stop there, though, as he also cooked their meals, washed their clothes, and cleaned their house. In May of 2009, police would receive a call about one of the roommates. A co-worker at Ryanair stated that Christophe hadn't reported to work, and no one had been able to reach him. When his roommates were questioned, along with Coker, they claimed that Christophe was on holiday and would soon be returning to his native France to live there permanently. His family was contacted, and they told investigators that Christophe had contacted them through email to let them know that he was safe and happy. A cursory investigation led nowhere, and even though he couldn't be found, being an adult, Christophe could move around as he liked and didn't have to notify anyone. Assuming nothing was amiss, officers dropped the case and thought no more of it. In November of 2012, over 4 years later, Coker, Wagner, and Bendu moved to Dumfries in Scotland, leaving the little rented house behind. Evidence would soon come to light that would shock and horrify everyone involved. On April 13, 2013, Bendu traveled from his current home back to Ellesmere Port. With only a few pounds left in his wallet, Bendu found a telephone box and contacted the police. He told a police operator that he not only knew where Christophe Bourgaille had disappeared to, but that he had been killed. Quote, "I'm confessing now because I felt it was too much for my mind and I want some peace." Since Christophe's disappearance, Bendu had been diagnosed as paranoid schizophrenic and through medication and therapy discovered some terrible secrets. When questioned, he initially claimed that Christophe's death had been due to an act of self-defense. Racked with both guilt and fear that Coker would soon eliminate him for being a weak link, Bendu was ready to confess. The next day, he took investigators to where Christophe's body was. Behind the house they rented in Ellesmere Port was a small brick shed at the back of the property, a shed that had much newer cement poured for the ground and in the shape of a bench. When the cement was taken apart, investigators found his body wrapped in a duvet cover and tarp held together by bungee cords. Wrapped with the body were also 2 paring knives, along with another knife handle with no blade, a hammer, and a SIM card from a cell phone. That card would show to be from Christophe's phone. Once his body was positively identified, an autopsy showed that the man had been attacked with a claw hammer and hit in the head 8 times. He had also been stabbed twice. Coker and Wagner were questioned again and claimed to have no knowledge of the murder. As investigators started to follow the evidence they had recovered, those stories began to unravel. Through a long process of research and mapping of financial transactions, the men's movements were accounted for in the days leading up to the murder. From a local builder's merchant in town, Coker and his accomplices bought bricks, a tarp, limestone chippings, and concrete to create the bench. They then bought 3 paring knives from a supermarket. Those would show to be the same knives entombed with Christophe. Investigators were now able to show that on the day of the murder, once Christophe's life had been taken, the 3 men went to lunch in Cheshire Oaks. The emails Christophe's family had received were actually from Coker, who hacked into his account. Before the three moved, all of Christoph's possessions were sold, and his roommates pocketed the money. As they left, the man told the new rental tenants to stay away from the shed, as the landlord used it specifically for his own possessions. With all the new evidence in hand, police arrested Coker and Wagner on suspicion of murder. One thing investigators were struggling with was, why was Christoph killed? The arrangement that the men shared seemed to work for them all, so what had led to the murder? Money would appear to be a factor, but maybe not the only one. Through numerous interviews, a more sordid story started to come to the surface. Christoph had decided to break up Coker's group and move to Belgium, leaving the man with one less income to draw from, but there may have also been jealousy involved, as it was rumored that Christoph and Wagner were in a sexual relationship. Coker, who felt he controlled everything, didn't like the relationship and wanted it to stop. To help convince his accomplices that Christoph had to die, Coker played on the men's insecurities and Bendu's mental illness. Bendu claims that Coker kept him cooperative by convincing him that Christoph was actually a secret agent from America who had been sent to target his family. The day of the murder, Coker and Bendu called Christoph down from an upstairs bedroom to the kitchen, the floor of which they had covered with a tarp. They had even gone so far as to cover their feet in blue plastic overshoes. When he made it downstairs, they converged on him. By July of 2013, Coker, Bendu, and Wagner were all under arrest for Christoph's murder. Coker and Wagner's trial were held together in March of 2014. Even though he continued to proclaim his innocence and offered no explanation for the murder, Coker was found guilty and given a life sentence with a minimum of 23 years. Wagner was not charged with murder in his trial due to insufficient evidence. He was charged with assisting an offender and preventing a lawful burial, but he was found not guilty. At the time of his arrest, he claimed to have thought for years that Christoph was just living happily ever after in China with a new girl. He said he played no part in the murder and was shocked and saddened by how things had turned out. Bendu had more treatment for his mental illness before his separate trial that year. Even though he claimed diminished responsibility because of his paranoid schizophrenia, he was found guilty of murder and was given a life sentence with a minimum of 14 years. In June of 2017, things would take a turn for Wagner, who had been free since his charges were dropped. Bendu came forward with newly clarified memories that Wagner had been there after all and had dealt the killing blow to Christoph himself. Afterward, while Coker mixed the cement for the bench, Wagner and Bendu wrapped Christoph up and carried him to the shed. In a new trial for Wagner, now with a murder charge and evidence to back it up, a jury returned a unanimous guilty verdict and sentenced him to a life sentence with a minimum of 16 years behind bars. Wagner heard the verdict and showed no emotion, according to local news sources. Whatever the reason for Christoph's murder, Judge Clement Goldstone described it as a truly wicked crime. He said, "It's impossible to imagine the pain and agony which Christoph Borghi suffered, albeit not for long, in the minutes following the attack on him. I only hope by the time he was wrapped up and to his tomb that he was dead." Case cracked. I would like to thank the Liverpool Echo, ITV.com, BBC.com, Cheshire Live, and the Standard Media. Of course, the biggest thank you goes to Christy Arnhart for researching and writing up today's case. And here she is now to discuss it with us. I'll never forget Christy at the first CrimeCon I went to. I was talking to a private investigator, and he told me that a lot of missing persons cases are actually unidentified homicide cases. And I don't know where he got the numbers from, but he was like, he said something like 80% of missing persons cases are actually unidentified homicides.
Wow.
But in this case, we didn't even know Christoph was missing.
No. And there has to be some kind of mechanism that people can use. I mean, as an adult, you can disappear or reappear as you want to, but I see so many cases where the family or friends, somebody comes forward and they're like, no, something's not right.
Yeah, this one's a little different. because we've got a roommate situation there. Sounds like the family
Mhm.
probably isn't really that close. I mean, if they were willing to take an email, I mean, and I mean logistically, like just physically not close enough to go do a verification for themselves. But,
Mhm.
I frequently when we're looking into cases on Searchlight, I'm always kicking myself when like their wallet's left behind. They have a large sum of money in the bank that they didn't take out.
Mhm.
Their driver's
Well,
license is left behind. Their car is left behind. So,
and in this one, Christoph left all of his stuff behind.
right, but I don't know if police ever knew that, because these guys are, I almost called them their friends. They were hardly friends of his, but
Yeah.
these guys are selling all the stuff off. So yeah, some of those triggers in this particular instance, really hard to go. But one trigger that I think could be looked at potentially is the job, like just abandoning a job.
Mhm.
And maybe if there was more information, we really don't know. Like, I don't know how long he was in that position, how important that job was to him. But if you leave a career behind in kind of mysterious circumstances like that, maybe that should be enough for some type of indicator to kind of like, we can't completely close this case out. We need to leave the missing person warning kind of active. Maybe not work the case necessarily, but just leave the flag in the system so that if some other person comes along later and they're like, hey, I also know this guy and he's missing and I don't know where he is, there's something to kind of pick up, because there's got to be other smaller indicators that are part of this. And maybe there's some kind of like, when you get a certain stack of, okay, we've heard 3 times in the last 2 months this guy's been missing, we need to reopen this and look at it deeper.
That's a really good idea. See, I had trouble coming up with mechanisms. Everything I came up with invaded a person's privacy.
Yeah, well, and in an investigation, I mean, that certainly happens, and I'm sure that's part of what fails in this story as well. I mean, how much can you really look into this guy's life when you're really not certain? You've got his roommates just saying, "Oh yeah, no, he said he was moving off to a different country," but did he give notice at work? No. Maybe another indicator could be, did he pick up his last paycheck? No.
Oh, that's a good one.
Can they look at his financial records a little bit and see if there was any cash outs or any usage? There's got to be some nexus of, if you have A, B, and C, we've got to keep this case open. Because, yeah, we run into this all the time looking into these types of stories. Christy, another thing I was just wondering about in this, I don't know if you ran into anything, but does Coker, he has a family, he's living next door at the start of this, but then all the guys move off together. Is his family coming along with him for that?
I had the same idea. I mean, he's got a wife and 3 kids. Did you just say, oh, they're moving, we're moving?
Yeah. Yeah. And I was finding information that one of the other guys also had a family that it seemed like was living with him as well. So
Really?
I don't, they got to be renting big houses, I guess. But
Yeah.
we know Christoph was a flight attendant. We know Coker was unemployed. Do we know what Bendu and Wagner actually did for work?
Yes. Actually, we do. They were both kitchen porters. And according to totaljobs.com, these are the type of duties that they had. You ensure basic cleaning jobs are carried out as quickly as possible. You collect and wash pots and pans, clean food preparation areas and equipment in addition to crockery and cutlery. You unload food and equipment deliveries. You keep the storeroom organized, keep surfaces, walls, floors clean and sanitized.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's kind of interesting, because like the paring knives thing is just it kind of sticks out to me a little bit. And seeing that 2 of them worked kind of in a kitchen industry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Although it seems like from those tasks, it wouldn't be like they're necessarily skilled with using paring knives on a daily basis or something, but I don't.
No, but they could work better at keeping the area, the crime scene, clean,
Right.
just
Right.
clean in total.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, there's another strange angle in this story with Coker becoming involved. How many people, have you ever heard of a situation like this where people just turn over their finances to a neighbor?
No, I've never heard anything like that.
I haven't either. It's even tough in relationships sometimes for people to
Oh, yeah.
have one person handle. Like sometimes they'll just know we're going to almost, be in a relationship, but financially we're going to live like roommates.
Yeah.
But here it's like they meet this guy and, oh, you want to, yeah, come clean our house, do our laundry, pay our bills. It's a really weird thing that's going from the start here. I'm really the social dynamics are really tricky on this one.
It is, and it's odd. And the only thing that I could come up with is that Coker had such a forceful personality. He was just a mastermind, and he loved controlling people. And paychecks, cleaning, all of that gave him the mechanism to control those men's lives.
Yeah. I would say there's definitely times in my life where I've let someone take the lead on things for a little while that I probably shouldn't have, or something like that. So, but usually it's someone close to you in terms of friendship. It seems like a weird thing. Maybe it was over a longer period of time that they were neighbors, and that friendship kind of grew to the point of all that stuff happening.
That's true. He could have acquired those duties as he went along instead of, yeah, that's true.
One thing that is, I think, just very unfortunate for this case is that the landlord didn't inspect the shed. Like, I fully believe that if someone owned that property, went back there, did an inspection, went and checked that shed and said, oh my, what happened in here? There's a bench in here now. Why did they? Landlords are usually pretty particular about any changes that are happening to their property. For someone to go build a concrete bench and then reconcrete the floor, like, it would have at least opened up some dialogue, I think, that might have led to the landlord becoming uncomfortable about what happened and maybe talking to police or something. Because
that's true.
Yeah, it's just, but it sounds like from the story, basically they handed over the rental to the next renters and gave them the instructions, to not go back there. So,
which I would have immediately done. I wouldn't have been able to stay out of there. I'm like, I'm renting this place, and they told me not to go in there.
Yeah.
I'd have totally done it.
Christy's landlord, are you watching this right now? Christy, thank you so much for all your hard work on this. We really appreciate you. And I've got some other people to thank right now. Thank you, PayPal supporters, Rita Maria Wanninger, Jennifer Wilson, and Larissa Mertshank. If you'd like to support the channel, please visit lordandarts.com. There, you can sign up for Patreon, sign up for PayPal, buy merchandise, or even just buy us a coffee, like Chauvin and Julie Meekum recently did. We know that learning about the mechanisms that help support and find justice in these cases is important to understand the many unsolved cases we also cover. We really appreciate your support in allowing us to continue doing that. Remember, you can get another Lord and Art story every week on the Seriously Mysterious podcast. A new episode is coming tomorrow and every Tuesday after that. Visit seriouslymysterious.com and remember to subscribe on your favorite podcatchers. Please also don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell icon below if you'd like to catch one of our weekly Secret Studio live shows. And of course, I'll be back with a new unsolved mystery for you on Friday, right here on the Lord and Arts channel.